Beit She'an is one of my favorite sites archaeologically and historically, and you can see the picture of the cityscape from this tell. This is this tell, which is a hill of cities layered one on top of another, is the ancient part of this city. In fact, as you look at some of the remains here on this tell, you're looking at 16th century BC, all the way back into the era of Pharaoh. But as you consider the cityscape here, you can see a typical Roman city. You have the Cardo, which is the street that runs north and south. And on either side, you have a marketplace where people would be selling goods and selling food, selling idols to be worshipped. To the right, there's an area that has 2 tent canopies on it. That's the Roman bathhouse. For the men, that was the place where the men would go, and they would socialize with each other and oftentimes just hang out and play games. Then to the left, you see the theater, an amazing theater that seated up to about 7,000 people with a backdrop, and this was a center for entertainment, and not just in the theater, but there also was a hippodrome where the horses would race, and then a coliseum as well, where gladiators would fight, where Christians would be thrown into the Colosseum ring and would be eaten by animals. So, you know, pretty, depending on the era, this was a fascinating city, and certainly in the Roman period it was pretty rugged. This was one of the 10 cities in the Decapolis. These were 10 Roman cities, 10 cities of commerce. 2 of them were on the west side of the Jordan River, the other 8 were on the east side. And of course, Beit She'an is just south of the Sea of Galilee. The only real historical connection here from a New Testament perspective, as close as we get, is the story of Jesus exorcising the legion of demons from that individual. And the pigs that were raised were most likely raised to be slaughtered and then to feed people here in the city of Beit She'an. So it's an amazing city. You know, from an Old Testament perspective, however, there are some interesting elements. As you read 1 Samuel chapter 30, the tragic end of King Saul happens here on top of this tell where the ancient city would have sat, where the temple would have been. And that was 3,000 years ago, or 1000 BC. As Saul had amazing beginnings, unfortunately though, as he progressed in time, his heart drifted from God. He was disobedient to the moral law of God, to the commands that God had given to him. He stood in the place of the prophet Samuel, and ultimately the kingdom was ripped from Saul's hands and given to a man who had a heart after God's heart. And of course, we all know that was David. But as Saul struggled, in the end, the Bible says that the Lord had sent adversaries against him to get his attention, to wake him up. He was relentless in turning his heart away from God, and ultimately he was killed by the Philistines. The armies were conquering the armies of Israel, and Saul was wounded. He fell on his own sword. His body was discovered. It was decapitated, and then his physical body was hung on the gates here on top of the city that was sitting on top of this hill. So you get a picture of that even from here, thinking about the great King Saul with his body hanging on the gates of this city, and what a tragic end, you know, and it's just a timeless reminder of our need to be obedient to the Lord and to follow Him with all of our heart, and to keep ourselves humble before Him, because this is what the Lord desires, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God.